Lord Bishop of St Albans.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, taken in isolation, the direct impacts on inflation and cost of living in the United Kingdom will be negligible. The UK imports a very small amount of wheat from India, and 88% of the wheat used in the UK is grown here. However, the UK is encouraging all countries to keep their global supply chains open to minimise the global pressure on food costs and, of course, to enhance global food security.
I thank the Noble Lord, the Minister, for his reply. A few minutes ago, some of us in the chamber were praying, "Give us this day our daily bread." And in the light of the increasing wheat prices, we need to not only redouble our prayers, but also focus our political action. What discussions has Her Majesty Government had with the Government of India about their export ban on cereals? And perhaps even more urgently, what support are we giving to the Government of Ukraine, who have huge surplus wheat stocks, which they normally export, to develop land-based and river-based export channels to help them in their plight and indeed aid the worldwide supply of wheat?
The Right Reverend Prelate makes good points. The cause of the Indian action was because there's a current heat wave in India which has curtailed wheat production, expected to fall for the first time in some years. But we have had dialogue with them. We are putting pressure on them because it does nobody any good if people do shut down their borders in relation to food supply. In terms of Ukraine, of course, it's a dire situation there. You know, if things do return to normal, which of course we must all pray that they do, food exports will, of course, will then start again from there.
Did you agree with the Minister that the supplies from India do not make that much impact? But the Noble Prelate's question about Ukraine is incredibly important. It's not just the amount of grain that is stuck in silos around Mariupol and Odessa, but it's also the new harvest that will be coming through on land that Ukrainian farmers can still get to. The World Health Organization and indeed the UN Emergency Food Programme says that the world's coffers are already empty in terms of feeding struggling countries, and that large-scale famines, as we haven't seen, are on the course. So can I ask the Minister if there's any way that the government can start talking about an equivalent of humanitarian corridors to try to get this food out of Ukraine, which otherwise will end up being completely wasted?
My Lords, we are indeed working with our G7 partners to bolster the global markets and to secure the export of wheat and other grains from Ukraine through grain corridors. I'm proud that we have now had over 50 WTO members supporting us in committing to keep food markets open, predictable and transparent.
My Lords, the impact of the consequences of the war in Ukraine and the decisions of the Indian government are felt here at home, but also the lowest income countries in the world. It's why the World Bank, the IMF and the World Food Programme together have put forward an overall package of support. The World Bank element of that is the International Development Association, of which in February, unique among all donor countries, the UK cut its support by £1.5 billion, an astonishing 54% reduction. In the situation that the world is now facing, why on earth did the government do this?
That's an important point, and I will write to the Noble Lord, giving some background on that.
My Lords, given this catastrophic situation in terms of world food shortages, surely it's imperative that Russia is made to lift its vindictive and highly dangerous embargo of the port of Odessa. What can HMG and its colleagues in the EU and NATO do about this?
My Lords, we had a good debate yesterday on these matters, on the debate on the gracious address, and I have to say we are all working very hard on this. But I think Noble Lords will appreciate the scope for direct action on that is limited.
My Lords, I think the House knows that the Black Sea ports are effectively going to be closed for some time to come for wheat export. I've come across a very interesting paper by the European Commission working out how to get the wheat by land, as the Right Reverend Prelate said, to other ports on the west. Could the Minister get in touch with the European Commission, if he hasn't already, and try and work together with them so we can all work together to get this corn out in a westerly direction?
My Lords, working together is obviously extremely important in a situation like this. I will read the report to which the Noble Lord refers and take it up.
The situation regarding the export of wheat from India reminds me of the Bengal famine of the 1940s, when grain was being exported to Britain, causing the famine. Isn't it totally wrong to expect India, in the circumstances with a heat wave and diminishing supply, to expect or to put pressure on the Indian government to supply grain?
My Lords, as I said earlier, only a very, very small amount indeed of Indian wheat comes to the UK. Indeed, the majority of production of wheat in India contributes to the domestic market. I think that India produced 109 million tonnes of wheat last year, and of that no less than 90 million was consumed domestically.
My Lord, since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the number of countries imposing export restrictions on food has climbed from 3 to 16, with Russia and Ukraine accounting for 29% of global wheat exports, and cereal prices having jumped another 6% following India's announcement. And the Minister is right, the impact on the UK will be negligible. But this is on top of a cost of living crisis. Can I ask the Minister what steps Her Majesty's Government are taking to alleviate the current cost of living crisis, and also what steps Her Majesty's Government are taking to mitigate the current vulnerability of food shortages and food cost spikes?
My Lords, I think that following this question, we have an urgent question on food shortages, and that may be the opportunity to go more into the detail on that. But of course, the government understands and deeply sympathises with the fact that the rising cost of living is making life harder for people. We should all be concerned about that, and we should all be looking for ways to ameliorate that.
My Lords, yesterday some of us received an excellent briefing from the UK's ambassador to Kyiv. What the ambassador said was that one of the problems with using the rail network is that there's a different gauge between Ukraine and indeed other NATO countries, particularly Poland. I wonder therefore whether the Minister might be in touch with army logistics experts to see what mechanisms there might be to transport large amounts of grain, which already exist, and to avoid the mines that have been placed by the Russians around Odessa, to get that grain onto the market.
My Lords, that's a good point, but I think the House would appreciate that changing railway gauges is a complex process which cannot be done in the short term. Let's hope that this conflict does not go on for so long that becomes the solution.
My Lords, given concerns about the supply and cost of imported grain into the UK, why is Her Majesty's Government maintaining tariffs on imported grain, imported wheat, which average 16%?
My Lords, my department has taken strong action on relation to this. It has either reduced or eliminated tariffs from Ukraine, and that was obviously the right thing to do in the terrible situation facing the people of Ukraine.
My Lords, in light of the shortages of grain that we've been hearing about in the last few minutes, does Her Majesty's Government have a view on whether domestic production of grain should be increased? And if so, how the increase in domestic production should be reconciled with other commitments that the government has made in relation to land use, such as protecting and enhancing biodiversity and sequestering carbon?
My Lords, food security is, of course, immensely important, and no more important than at the present time. We are fortunate in this country that we do grow most of the wheat that we consume, and I'm sure that the lessons that we should all learn from the need for resilience is to boost domestic production wherever possible.
Lord Barclay, seemed to assume that we wouldn't be able to get the grain out of the Odessa and the other ports. I hope this isn't the case, and I wonder if there are some discussions taking place with the Ministry of Defence to see if a way can be found to use those ports.
My Lords, I'm sure those discussions are continuing, but I think the House will appreciate we are deep in a conflict there. And when one is deep in a conflict, these things are very hard to achieve, much though one might wish them to be achieved.